Well, good morning. It is Wednesday, and somehow between Monday and now, this camera got incredibly bright. Okay, I mean, look at that. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know how that happened. This other one is fine, but this one, the contrast or the settings on it somehow changed, and I'm not sure what's going on. So it is very bright. I know it's going to be hard to look at, isn't it? So, but the lighting seems to be the same. I don't know what to say other than that when I turned it on, it was like, whoa, that hurts my eyes. And it probably does yours too. So maybe, I have no idea. Yeah, do that. Contact tech support and find out, because I'm sure that's going to be, if anybody's watching this live or on YouTube, it's going to be kind of disturbing. Who would ask for a flip? So I'm going to flip an alligator clip this morning. Flip a clip. These are kind of fun to flip. They don't go flying very far. They're shiny. They make a nice little noise when they land. They're light enough that they don't. No, tech support has arrived. Well, and we'll see what happened. We're going to go to break and fix this. Be right back. No, tech support came. There we go. And it's back the way it was before. I don't know what happened, but it's been, you missed the flip. There were like 6 flips. But because I don't really feel like doing anything else today, maybe what I'll be doing is, this will be a flipping show today. Yeah, and the technical difficulties, for some reason, the whole camera, everything was really bright. I'm not sure what happened. So I moved this camera up because I'm going to be, well, this might as well be Monday the way things are going here. Oh, look at all the flips. Okay, that's what we'll be doing. We'll flip this. Good thing I'm flipping something light, because all the parts are in there. It's kind of, relaxing. What we can do is, okay, those of you who have ever done statistics know that if this is truly random, we don't know because it's curved, it's an oddly shaped thing, so it's not maybe even on either side, that if I flip this 100 times, it should come up 50 this way and 50 this way. Who would like to do that? Who would like to flip this 100 times and see which way it comes up? 2 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 2, 4 to 2, 5 to 2, 6 to 2. Oh, this is not good. 6 to 3, 6 to 4. Maybe it, 6 to 4, 7 to 4, 8 to 4, 8 to 5. You bored yet? 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 9 to 7. It evens out. 10 to 7. And it fell on the floor, so the experiment is over. It was 10 to 7, which is not quite even. How many billionaires can I fit on my sub? Well, let me show you. Just compare it to my finger. These are the bunks. So I can fit 4, 2, 4, 6, and 2, 30. I think about 30. If you can find them this size, I can get about 40 out. I can. So, but they have to be, if they want to sleep, they have to be able to fit in these bunks. And if they want to sit down, they need to be able to get their butts onto one of these chairs. Okay, and even in the little ones. So if they can't, then they can't get on my submarine. Okay. So what shall I do today? These parts are done. And this one, I think this came out really pretty cool. This particular control panel, and I don't know what happened there, but I managed to get the paint on it. And well, if they're on this submarine, then that's a very likely thing to happen. Anyway, that round bit there got all glossy and raised up. It looks really good. This one needed some touch up, and then I started working on this one. So I'm going to do a little bit more work on the detail of these control panels just so I can finish them. And then I am going to be painting bulkheads. Okay, these need to, the backgrounds to these need to be painted the color of the rooms, I'll call them that they're in. And then I have this one. This bulkhead is the one that goes, I'll show it to you, move ahead here. This is the bulkhead that goes here behind all of this stuff that I've been working on for the last several years, and separates it from this big section here, which is where the missile tubes go. And I'm going to be painting this kind of ahead of time because, as I keep saying, the parts aren't fitting. There's some parts that just are not fitting at all. And as a result of that, this part in particular needs to be 1/10 of an inch longer on this side and 1/10 of an inch shorter on this side in order for these that hold these tubes to line up with the periscopes in the submarine. Yeah, so there's that's coming up, but I want to paint this one because this is what holds all the pieces in place, all those other decks. So I need to have this basically in place in order to do the fitting of these other things. So I've got that. So yeah, finishing this control panel, doing some highlighting on this, painting the bulkheads, including this one up here, which is the forward bulkhead of the torpedo room that also needs to be painted in great detail. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully after spending a lot of time working on tiny little detail things, it won't be messed up. It depends on the viscosity of the paints. I hope they behave for me today. Well, yeah, I was going to finish up the little dials and stuff on this control pan and take these off and put on, I'll be probably wearing these for a good long time. Yeah, I mean, you would think that something that expensive, like a luxury liner or a deep diving submarine would be recyclable at least, rather than just a one-use throwaway. But, you know, I guess if you're really wealthy, you can just do that. A bit bigger here. See if I can focus this at all. Oh my, okay. There's a couple of little challenges going on here that I need to work on. Tiny bits of touch-up. But what I'm going to be doing is using the head of the pin. This is the technique I used before. And get some of this black felt tip marker ink on it. And I use this to touch it to things like that. You know, just go silent here while I try to do this. If I'm going to be painting all these tiny little things today, we'll see how it goes. This hasn't been a good week for tiny little things. Just, you know, just little frustrating stuff here and there. So, yeah, we'll see how Sub Wednesday goes compared to all the rest of the stuff that's been not quite working. But you know where I like it too. Okay, well, that looks okay from a distance. There's one really odd thing here. I'm not sure what it is. That's what it is now. Okay. This one here, right down at the bottom, needs this tiny touch of the neutral gray paint. And I'm not using that neutral gray paint anywhere else, really. Well, I am on I use it on the hatches. Yep. So I've got a hatch on here, so if I get the paint out, I might as well use it here as well. Yeah, so let's move. This part isn't going to get painted. This part is going to just sit aside and be a reminder of how annoying it's going to be trying to fix that later. So we're going to start with neutral gray here. No, we're getting pretty good effect today. I'm going to just keep that going. That's pretty cool. Yep. I'm going to be doing everything slowly today. Today is going to be a slow day. Which means that I can pack a whole little into a lot of time. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for getting a whole little done in a whole lot of time. The application of that tiny touch of paint. This one gets to join the other folks over here in this is done pile. Pretty nice, huh? Okay, on this one, this side is not too bad. This is pretty, there's not much on here. There's a frame for the hatch and a ladder, but the ladder is done with the felt tip pen and some fire extinguishers. So I'm going to paint this gray on both sides, and then I'm going to do the fire extinguishers. And then there's a bunch of stuff here. There's some lockers, there's a table, another control panel with a bunch of dials and things on it. So that's going to be, that's going to take a little bit of time to do. And since I'm doing things very slowly, the amount of time it's going to take is large. So if you wanted to, if you're watching, if you could, I don't know if you can do that. If you watch something on YouTube, can you speed it up like you can with something that you record on your DVR or whatever? I mean, it would be good if you could, because at the pace I'm going to be moving today, you might want to just watch it at like double speed, and then it would be kind of normal. As much as the stream is ever normal, it could be that. I think I promised some time ago that my monologue would be about living in a time of nuclear Armageddon back in the 1950s and 60s. I think it's just kind of a joke thing, I forget what the turtle's name was. But there was a turtle that wore a civil defense helmet. Yeah, there was this thing called civil defense. Okay, and they got helmets, I think. Can't remember exactly. I think they were white, and they had like a triangle symbol on them or something. Because I don't think I'm not sure these signs even exist unless someone forgot to take them down. But there were designated fallout shelters all over the place. Our grade school actually was one of those that had the fallout shelter sign up. Those were places you could go during nuclear attack, and you could hang out there, you know, until you ran out of food and water. And you could tell it was a fallout shelter civil defense thing because there were these, they looked like 50-gallon drums. I'm not making this up, seriously. There were these things that looked like 50-gallon drums. I think they were actually just made out of cardboard with metal lids. And there were two kinds of things in them. One was hardtack. I mean, basically, they were crackers. Really hard, dry crackers. And the other was candy. It's like a sucrose thing that I think it was fortified, maybe even had vitamins in it or something. I remember them because there was like an expiration date on them or something, and they opened them up for some reason. I can't remember why. I don't think it was a demonstration. I think maybe they were taking it away, but we all got to eat some of the candy that was going to save our lives if we were in the fallout shelter for 2 weeks waiting for whatever the half-life of the most dangerous radiation was to pass. But yeah, a lot of buildings had these red and black fallout shelter signs on them. And they were all equipped with these barrels of crackers and candy. I remember when they stopped that, when they took them away. But at some point they decided that, it wasn't something that was worth continuing. Yeah, it was kind of, an interesting time to be growing up. So what other things do I remember? Well, that must have been fun being an engineer on there going, oh, I know that noise. That noise means that it's going to implode and kill us all. I sure hope that my trip ends before that happens. They installed one of the turbines backwards, and what happened then is that one of the things that drove it, so that when they pushed forward, it went backward, that kind of thing. That would have been fun. It's kind of like, announcing something on Twitter and not having it work. Okay, red. I need to paint the fire extinguishers red. There's some on either side. Wow, look at these. Ooh, we're going to do a fire extinguisher comparison. Look at how big these are compared to these. For some reason, those are really large. And the really cool thing about these is that when you put it together, you can't even see them because there's a bulkhead right in front of them. That this piece goes right there. Okay. So now you can't see. Now you can't see the fire extinguishers behind you. No, this is another thing. See how well this fits? When you put the piece in where it's supposed to be, it blocks that locker. But what really will happen it's very nice of you to do that. What will really happen is that when I extend the deck 1/10 of an inch, this will come out like this, and it will be not blocking the locker. The downside is that there's a big gap there now, and I'll have to fill that in too with some sort of fabricated plastic piece. So I don't know. I'm not really sure how long all that's going to take. It's going to be quite a chore. This would be a lot easier to build if the pieces fit, especially this one deck, because it's a really important thing that the periscopes line up with the tubes that support them. And when they don't, then the whole thing is kind of awful, just a real mess. But at least the control panel things all came out. They look okay. I'm satisfied with how they turned out. Yep. Being a flaw here, though. It's a pretty obvious one. Remember when I had the neutral gray paint out and I did just this tiny little dot? Yeah, well, there's another spot that needs a tiny little dot. So this gives me an excuse to continue to not get things done today. Yeah. Then I get to spend some time screwing the cap back on the paint, and I get to wash the brush. At this rate, relaxing painting today I'll be able to cover like 15, 16 square millimeters of something with paint, maybe. At the rate this is going. So there's all these submersibles. You know, there's probably like a dozen out there that can go down to that depth, or even further, like to the Marianas Trench, right? It's this one that blew up, and it just so happened that it was one where the person who was owning it was doing untested technology and was horribly arrogant about it. You know, all you can say is, yeah, it makes sense that that's the one that would fall apart. Certification, I don't need no stinking certification. That kind of thing. This whole thing would be going way faster if I had decided not to really paint very much of it. You know, to ignore the details and all. But, you know, this is relaxing painting with dice and dungeons, and so there it is. Get to paint all of the detail that was put onto this submarine by the submarine designers, submarine design kit designer. And I'll show you, you know, the part that I did before. I like to show that off because it's something that actually was finished. There's not too much having been finished here, because I don't know, parts don't fit, things get painted, they get touched up, they get retouched. A whole lot of that going on. like I said, this is just going to be painted the base color, and then the ladder is done with a felt tip pen. I've done that before. I can actually set this down even though that piece is painted, because these things that hold the floors in place keep it from touching anything. I found that's kind of a nice thing. Well, let's see, what have we got? We've got lockers and control panels. Okay, yeah, I'm really thinking well here today. So I said, you know, this neutral gray, how I was doing tiny little touch-ups except for the door there, except for the hatch. Well, the control panels are also painted this color. And so I should have painted this. Well, I had the paint out, but I didn't because, you know, I didn't. You're painting this panel that has stuff on it, all this neutral gray color, and then those things will be painted elsewise, white for the dials, and maybe red or something for some of these other things. Use the felt tip pen and just touch those kind of horizontal lines, whatever they're supposed to be. No, yeah, nuclear Armageddon. So yeah, look around. If you, I don't, like I said, I don't know really if there are any fallout shelter signs still left on buildings. They may have all come down by now, because it was a long time ago that those things were up. But that was part of our preparedness, you know. For some reason, people actually thought that if you went into a school basement and ate crackers and yellow and red candies, for 2 weeks, that everything would be fine when you came out. So then there was this turtle guy, and I can't remember the name of the turtle. Sorry about that. Name that name. There is that. Trying to remember something. And his famous thing was, when you see the flash, duck and cover. Hi, Firestorm. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being a follower. Really appreciate it. I hope you like Submarine Wednesday. Generally, I am painting dungeon tiles and minifigs. I had just completed a squadron of Dragonkin, who were definitely not Power Rangers. Did that on Monday. But on Wednesdays, I get to work on this Renwall Vintage Submarine, and this is a bunch of the parts. And I'm going to paint. So what have I got left here? I mean, all the dials and buttons, I have to do those. Those would be a multi-layer touch-up kind of thing. Paint the lockers, the locker color, and the base of the table is brown. The top of the table is a desk. Yeah, it's a desk. It's actually got, they even did the detail of the drawers. You can see like the drawers are. So this not being a table, the top is not going to be white because it's a desk. The whole thing will be brown. which is good. So it's the amazing thing about this submarine is that there's huge detail, like the clock face on this little dial. Okay, you can see the clock face on here. You can see the drawer pulls on the drawers. And then when they molded it, in injection mold with the polystyrene and all, some of the parts didn't have enough plastic in, so they were incomplete. Some of them had so much flashing on you could hardly recognize what they were. Many of them don't fit, so like the tabs don't fit into the slots on the floors. So a good deal of time is spent on relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons to just get things to fit together. And then sometimes once I get them to fit after they're painted, a little paint gets on the surfaces and the tolerances are pretty small. And so, and then they don't fit again, so there's that. But this is one of the bulkheads. This particular bulkhead here goes between the control room up here, the dormitory, basically, and the mess hall here, and the gyro room down here. So this bulkhead ends up actually going to have 3 different colors on it. It's green up here, which is where the mechanical rooms are, and 2 different colors, because this is green also. But then there's a light blue color that goes in here, where this room is. And I know those colors not because they're on the color chart. The painting instructions for this are very, very minimal. So I'm using the box top, which I'll show you later, because I want to show you where all this stuff goes. All these little bits and pieces of things, how they fit together. Yeah, I thinned this paint. This is actually pretty old paint. Thinned it down because it was it needed thinning, and now it's a little too thin. I might have to put 2 coats on. Looks like I probably will. Get the eyedropper out and put some drops of thinner in some paint. You don't know how it's going to turn out until you try it later. So probably what I could do is I could just leave the bottle open here for a little while. Actually, this is going on. If I can get it even, it might be just enough color. No, it's not going to work. I'll leave this bottle open and let it evaporate a little bit, de-thin itself, so to speak, and then put a second coat on. Other thing I could do is give it a little more stirring. So Dyson Dungeons, since we have a new follower, is a group of family and friends who started over a year ago playing a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. And that Dungeons & Dragons campaign continues to this day. And we stream that with a live chat 3 Sundays a month at 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. And it is a wonderful campaign in a world created by our dungeon mistress, Alexis. and we have a great time playing the game and putting on the show. It's really quite entertaining. So if you can, catch it with the live chat, and if you can't do that, you can see previously streamed episodes on YouTube, or even listen to them as a podcast. And I really strongly encourage you to do that. This stream started because our other stream got more and more elaborate as we graduated from playing on a 1x1 printed plastic grid to getting 3D minifigs. And then we got a 3D printer, like there's 3 of them behind us now, PLA printers, and started printing other things like little animals and barrels and tents and campfires and dungeon tiles with walls and floors. And then to make them look sort of realistic, we started painting them. And color for the table. And then for some reason, and I can't remember why, either Alexis or Nicole, two of the other members of Dice and Dungeons, said, well, if we're painting, why don't we stream the painting? It's like, okay, well, what's the difference if we're painting anyway? You put up a little ring camera like this, and an extra camera and a microphone. We already had pretty much everything we needed to put together, not a studio. This isn't a studio, this is a workbench, and a ring camera and a microphone. Anyway, we had all the pieces, and so started streaming it. And we called it Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, because for the most part, we were actually painting things, and I can't say that it was terribly relaxing ever, but, it's supposed to be relaxing for the people who are following it, primarily because I move along really quite slowly. To be honest, I'm not either a terribly good painter or a terribly good model maker. Okay? And so I find that my results are better if I go slow. And then I reduce the number of disasters, like bumping into things and knocking them over, or trying to paint something but having the brush hit something else on the way over. Like I'm trying to paint this desk, so I would not pay attention and bump into something I already painted. So if I go fairly slowly, I can usually reduce the number of incidents like that to no more than 2 per stream. I would say it's a very rare stream when there isn't at least one. Okay. Today's disaster hasn't happened yet, but I can almost guarantee that there will be one. So don't turn away. You don't want to miss it when it happens. Okay, so this desk is turning brown, and this is a much nicer color when it dries. It turns into that. Okay, which is much nicer than this kind of dull kind of brown that it is now. So yeah, we started doing dungeon tiles and minifigs, and we started producing very elaborate dungeons, some of which, there's some stuff that we started with. We call it scatter, which are little pieces to just, there's some stalactites for one of the the stalagmites, barrels, including a mimic. Anyway, it was fun painting those kinds of things. There's one of the dungeons that's like a necromancy lair or a blood magic user, but I'll show you how those tiles work later on in this stream when I move things out of the way. I'm putting the second coat on the lockers now. So today's relaxing monologue, since even Medicinal Shy Guy isn't talking very much in chat today. Usually there's a dialogue going on between Who and Medicinal. So I'm not sure what the problem is. But then I'm kind of forced to do these monologues. Just say that it's not my fault. I wouldn't do them. I would just remain silent and let you listen to the music. But, by popular demand, meaning nobody asked at all, really, to be honest. Because even though nobody really asked, I thought, well, I suppose if we're streaming something, I should fill the time. And, so I talk about various things. Today I'm talking about growing up in the 50s and 60s in the era of nuclear Armageddon, when we had to be prepared. And I had been talking about the presence of fallout shelters in many buildings across cities and towns. Basically anything with a basement could be a fallout shelter. My grade school was a fallout shelter. How did that? I understand why the coverage is so poor on that. Yeah, my grade school was a fallout shelter. So we were pretty... Oh, work. Yeah, I remember that. I used to have a job. Yeah, it took up a lot of time. I had to pay attention to it and stuff. It was like almost as taxing as yeah, 4-year-olds. There's all sorts of games for 4-year-olds. I would say that you want some action games. You can do games like Chutes and Ladders, that are really simple. You don't have to much pay attention. You just spin something or roll a die or something or pick cards and you move to the different places, and it's all pretty random. But it gives the kids a real sense of competition, so that they can yell and hate each other and maybe hit each other because they're cheating or whatever. But well, there's two kinds of you want to get them involved in just playing a game. So something like I'm not wanting to violate copyrights or anything, but I'm just talking about my experiences that games like Splat, where you move bugs on a board, and you get this little foot thing, this plastic foot, and if you roll a certain number or move to a certain spot, you get to stomp the plastic foot on the Play-Doh bugs that you're moving, and they go splat, and the whole board gets covered with flattened Play-Doh insects. That's kind of fun. But yeah, what you want to do is is you want to play simple games where they pretend to be somebody else. So maybe you can't do Dungeons and Dragons because, they might not really be getting into like elves or something like that. But you can, since you're playing at home and not streaming, you don't have to worry about appropriating copyrighted material. You can have them pretend to be like their favorite cartoon characters or movie characters or something, and they have to make sure that they're not just imitating what they've seen, but it's like creating new situations and saying, what would Elsa do now, or what would Ariel do now, or what would whoever, what would Yogi Bear do now, or worse yet, what would Boo Boo do now? They'd have no idea what that is, but if you were older, you could do that. But yeah, I think those kinds of things would be something you could do. That looks like an alarm up there. There was another one here. I'm not sure where it was now. Oh yeah, there's one here. I think those are supposed to be alarms, and I painted one once before, and I painted it this red color, so I'm going to do that now, just to maintain some sense of consistency from one thing to the other. But yeah, if you have a child who has like a favorite character, and you can say you can be like this person, but you have to, in new situations, you have to do what you think they would do, not what you would do, but what would they do in that situation. I think that might be kind of fun. You can't really probably get into like structured games or anything like that, but you certainly could get into pretending to be in a situation, and you could even use your DMing skills to create the situations that you need to be working in. If you're just playing games, like I said, there's lots of fun games out there, but if you want to be creative, you need to pretend what it's like to be somebody else. And that might even help build a sense of empathy or whatever. Because if you're pretending to be somebody else, then you have to acknowledge that somebody else has, thoughts and feelings that are different than yours. And that helps them understand that kind of thing can happen. That there are other people who have thoughts and feelings and they're not the same as you. So maybe, you could do a whole equivalent of a D&D session with characters from your child's favorite things. Yeah, especially if there are characters that are interesting, who might actually be quite different than your job. Unstable liability that threatens the world around her simply by existing. I can think of several people like that. Why would your daughter be even familiar with them? You watch too much news network. Yeah, I could go on and on about that. 24-hour news, right? How much news you get. When was the last time you heard anything about the civil war in Sudan on one of the news networks? Of course, you don't ever ride a bike without a helmet. Pediatrician went on and on about that. Like that was one of the most important things in her office. And we know all these pictures of kids wearing helmets and adults wearing helmets. She even had a helmet in her office to show that, I'm a doctor and I wear a helmet. So who do you think you are not wearing a helmet? It doesn't matter whether you think she'll crash or not. It's just what you do. When you ride a bike, you wear a helmet. When you get in a car, you wear your seatbelt. Okay? Our kids learn that. They would get in a car and they would put on a seatbelt. Why? Because that's what you do when you go into a car. When you get on a bike, you wear a helmet. And one of our kids actually did. Twice. Fell down. And, the sound a helmet makes when it hits the ground, I don't know, you've probably heard that then, if you crash. It's not quiet. It's quite startling, and to think that could be... Sorry, I'm looking up the color that I need for the tops of the fire extinguishers. To think that could be a kid's head instead of the helmet, that's pretty scary. All you need to do is hear that once, and everything but the color I need. There it is. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, all you have to do is hear the sound of the helmet hitting the road once when the kid slips, their bike falls. And you make sure that there's a helmet on all the time. And as our pediatrician pointed out, I didn't think of this, okay, is that if the helmet hits the ground loud enough to hear the sound, that the material inside of it is kind of friable. I mean, it absorbs energy, and when it absorbs energy, it deforms or even cracks. And it's like, if your helmet hits the ground, you need to get a new helmet. Just period. Because that one is now compromised. Yep. So bicycle helmets are really important, and just getting into the habit of it and knowing that it's a cool thing to do, that people who don't do it are wrong, do the old I'm better than you routine. There's always that as a motivation. It seems to work pretty well. Is Yeah, this is one of those things that takes a lot of time, and you go, why am I bothering to paint the tiny little tops? That's absolutely right. Yep, that when the helmet has done its job, you thank it. You say, thank you very much. It's time for you to retire. You did what you were meant to do. Let's go shopping for another one. And with your daughter, it's probably like her favorite color has probably changed. So it's like, I don't like that blue helmet anymore anyway. And it's an opportunity then to get a new, better color and everything. So it's like a win-win-win. And of course, you have to be careful that she doesn't learn that every time she wants a new helmet color, all she has to do is take the helmet and bang it against something, and you hear the cracking sound, and she comes in kind of crying a little bit. You can tell it's not real crying. You can tell it's like, I want to manipulate you crying. So I fell from my bike, I hit my head, I need a new helmet. Kids learn these things. You could be buying new helmets like twice a month. But it's better to do that than to not have a helmet on at all, that's for sure. Okay. Paint didn't cover either. I am beginning to be frustrated by some of these paints not really working very well. Color just didn't cover. So this is becoming relaxing repainting at Dyson Dungeons today, because I am doing a lot of two coating. Some organs are okay. It depends on what part of you crashed. But I do think that motorcyclists without helmets might actually be a major source of organ donations. I'm not sure about that, but I think that might actually be the case. Okay, so what needs to be done on this one is the door handle, the little porthole in the hatch. I think is there another hatch? Yeah, there's another one with that. These style faces need to be painted white and then touched with the black pinhead. So just, it's a tiny little junk yet that needs to be done before these are finished. Okay, I'm going to get the red pen. We use this felt tip pen to do the door handle, the hatchway handle. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a window in the hatch. And what I have been doing, like twice now, is getting a toothpick, whittling down the point so it's a very fine point. Really whittling. I guess it's kind of whittling. I did whittling a few streams ago when I fabricated sword blades and hilts. And I'm going to use the chrome. Which apparently is already out here somewhere. There it is. And so on these hatches, tiniest little indentation there, right there. That is a window, and I want that to show. So I take the fine tip of a toothpick and just touch the tiniest little bit of chrome paint to that. And chrome, you know, it's not the color of windows aren't chrome colored, but it gives the appearance of like being glass. Looking at it, sometimes I don't have to get a drop out. Sometimes I can just use what's in the cap. So I've done this a couple of times. Let's see if I can do it twice more. See? That pretty much worked. A little bigger than I wanted, but I can use the, I'll come back and touch that up. The neutral gray paint. Okay. So these bulkheads get painted all sorts of different colors depending on where they are. Okay. Like this one. They're just referred to as organ donors. There we go. Well, this is really getting good. Yeah, a lot of things depend on how long they've been dead. Okay, I'm trying to remember. This particular bulkhead on this side is the head, the bathroom side, and that is painted a peculiar color, this color, which isn't used anywhere else on the entire submarine except in the head. And so this bulkhead and the very top of this one, which go here and here, are painted this color in order to match the bulkhead on the other side, which is already installed in the submarine hull that has the toilets on it. So these here are painted this color. And I don't use this paint very often, so I'm not sure how it's going to behave. We will see. The other side of this is in a room that's full of bunks, and that's painted light blue, just like the show you. It's painted this color because it's the same color as all the rooms with the bunks in them. No, by the way, this is, I actually, this is what things start to look like when they're finished. This is it's a bunk room, an officer's boardroom, and the galley and the mess hall. And when this goes into the submarine, you see it from the side like that, because there's a deck below and a deck above. This deck here becomes the ceiling, like that. So after all that work, that's all you actually see. Okay. And then there's this bunk deck. This goes underneath like this. It all gets weirdly sandwiched together like that, and then shoved into the hull of the submarine. And these aren't assembled because the assembly doesn't work until all 3 decks actually are completed. But you can see that I've actually done something. And this particular deck is almost, but it's not quite as complicated as the mess deck was. But the parts, there's just major part fitting problems that I don't know. I'm not even sure if I'll do that. I might just do them on stream just so you can share in the pain with trying to get this all to work. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do here, and we'll see how successful I am. Make sure I've got the right side here. What I'm going to try to do is paint this and this, the gray areas that are left, this color, without messing up the parts that I've already painted. And if I recall, this color covers very poorly and needed at least 2 coats. So yeah, there's just that. It's a little mixing ball in there. I'm finally getting it stirred up enough. This has been sitting for a long time, and so the pigment has settled out pretty badly. This is my favorite part of the whole submarine. These are supposed to be batteries, and all I needed to do was just paint it black. That's all. Just one color. That was good. That was fine. What we have here are the 3 different decks. This is the same deck that I showed you before with the bunks in the mess hall. So this is painted light blue to match that. This is in the control room, which is the thing I'm painting now with all the controls. And this is in a gyro room, which has just like a couple of little parts in it. So besides these bulkheads, the inside of the hull of the submarine, which if you've been watching this stream you haven't seen in a long, long time, and it's been a long, long time since I showed you that, the inside of the hull also needs to be painted these different colors at different levels, so that when you look through it, like I showed you before when I put this on top of the mess hall, when you look through it, there's places where you can see the hull. And so that needs to match. And that also has all the gewgaws and stuff on it that need to be painted. Yeah. The only thing I can say about this is that if you were to play this in fast motion, okay, if you were to take relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons and take like 8 submarine Wednesdays and just paint them, play them in fast motion, you'd actually see things being done. But if you were to just watch one, like you're doing now, you'll say, does anything ever happen? Do things get painted? Parts get put together? What is this? Is this just a senseless monologue about whether you should wear a helmet or not? Of course you should. Places in the world where you should just wear a helmet all the time. If you're ever a pedestrian in Cairo, I don't know how many of you have ever had the opportunity to be a pedestrian in Cairo. But if you've ever tried to cross the street there, you would say that that would in fact be a good place to be wearing a helmet, just as you're walking around, because it's challenging and dangerous. If you're riding a bicycle or a bicycle, it could save your life. If you're riding a motorcycle, you want to be like armor protected. Helmets, gloves, the freedom of the road or whatever, but if your body just happens to meet the road at 70 miles an hour and you're not wearing a helmet and all you've got on is a t-shirt, that the road's going to win that fight. But back to nuclear Armageddon. So growing up in the 50s and 60s, and there's fallout shelters everywhere, including in your grade school. That made us feel really safe because, if we were ever attacked by atomic weapons while we were in class, all we had to do was go to the basement. I think we thought about our parents very much or anything at that moment, but anyway, that's all we needed to do. And like I said, it was well stocked with inedible crackers and red and yellow candies that were slightly citrus flavored, I guess. They weren't very good candy, but we actually got to try them after they decommissioned, where they hit their expiration date or whatever. Saying earlier, I don't remember if they went around and took down all the fallout shelter signs when they stopped having them. If your basement didn't have a barrel of crackers and candy in it, then you were no longer really a fallout shelter, and you shouldn't have your sign up. But yeah, our grade school was. So there was this turtle whose name I still can't remember, and the famous thing, there was a little cartoon with the turtle, and the turtle said, "When you see the flash, duck and cover." So if you've ever seen like old newsreels, that was a thing, a newsreel. They really were. They were reels of paint, of film. So a newsreel was a reel of a film where they showed atomic blasts. What you knew was, and you knew this, that if you saw the flash, you were blind. I mean, just because the flash was this incredibly bright light given off by the explosion of the nuclear weapon. But yeah, if you see, when it wasn't like if, when you see the flash, immediately duck and cover. You know, and if a flash didn't blind you because maybe you were a long way away, or maybe you just saw a reflection of the flash, maybe not the flash itself, but maybe it was reflected against the wall. You know, maybe you were in class and the curtains or blinds were drawn on the windows because you didn't want too much sun coming in. So when you see the flash, you duck and cover, and you would, in the promo thing they put out for this, the kids dutifully put their hands over their heads, and they dove under their desks. That's what we did. And so after the blast wave ripped through your school and blew out all the windows, after all of that happened, then you could go down to the fallout shelter in your basement of your school, because the basement didn't have any windows. Well, yeah, that's why it was a fallout shelter. And you could stay down there then for 2 weeks, eating little crackers and yellow and red candies. Yeah, but this was real. I mean, that's how we were all planning to survive nuclear Armageddon, is when you see the flash, not if, when you see the flash. Get under your desk and put your hands over your head. Now, what I really need to do is get out a bigger brush and go across the top of this, so that the paint is a little more even. Try to do that. Just this part up here of the lockers as much as I can to give this an even coat. Dries, eventually it will do that. Yeah, it won't look too scabby. It'll need some touching up here and there, but there's that. I'm going to keep this out. I need to paint the doorway. I can't keep holding it like that. That's silly. So I'm going to take this alligator clip, just grab it right here. There. So some of the other cool things were, besides duck and cover, right? And that's famous because then it became almost a parody. We laugh at it now. So what were we thinking back then? Well, what we were thinking was that we were going to see the flash, and we better duck and cover because that's the only way we were going to survive the blast wave that was almost inevitably going to follow the flash and the explosion of the thermonuclear weapon. But we had other cool things back then because, you know, the threat of nuclear war was so real, actually. Is we'd go to the state fair. Okay. And when we go to the state fair, they would have a vendor there who sold fallout shelters. And the way these fallout shelters worked, you could do them two different ways in terms of access. Okay, basically they were prefabricated rooms with some sort of ventilation and a chemical toilet, some shelves. I'm pretty sure that they came with barrels of crackers and red and yellow candies. I'm pretty sure they came that way. But they'd come, and I don't think they had misdig or anything. They'd come and they'd dig a hole in your yard, a big hole, and then they'd set this prefabricated shelter in. And they'd have a full-sized one there. You know, these vendors would come with a full-sized fallout shelter. I mean, it was like the real thing, right? You'd see what you were buying. And you could sign a contract there and then to have them come and get one. And we were little kids then, probably like 6 or whatever. Dad, why don't we get one of those? You know, it wasn't so much that we were thinking about surviving a nuclear holocaust, right? I mean, that was kind of it. But that's just so uneven. I hope it levels out a little bit as it dries. At least it's the only room in the submarine that's using this color. The light blue and the light green that are the other two primary colors have the same problem, as they don't level very well. But anyway, this is a tiny little room and no one's going to pay attention to it, at least this side of it. Okay, put a second coat on this. I'm using a slightly larger brush. Again, trying to make the coating of the paint even. Not to have too many brush marks. So it's going on very thick. But I think as such, at least here, I think that will dry fairly evenly. Not sure what else I can do with this other than let it dry and put a second coat on it and see how it goes. So set that there. I need to touch up the top of the locker a little bit. That this orangey kind of paint got down too much on the top. Not that you'll be able to see it when it's installed, but I'll know it's there. Okay. The other side of this is painted light blue, which matches this side here. Okay. Because the other side of this goes up against the room that has these bunks in them. And I can't paint that color until this dries, because it has to be on the other side of this. So what I do have is a bunch of stuff painted green. This is down here where the servo room is. So this is painted green. Okay. The control room up here is painted green. Oh, I need to paint those dials. And this side is part of the control room. This is painted green. This side is painted the light blue, which again is the color I can't paint until that's dry. And that's going to be second coated, so it's going to be a little while. I'm going to try to get these clean. Try not to destroy the brush here. Yeah. No, think about the subject matter. This is the Polaris launching missiles prototype. This was a huge breakthrough in the arms race, racing yet ever more arms. So this submarine was created because anti-aircraft weapons had become reliable and available enough. I haven't talked about that yet. I haven't talked about our Nike sites in the city where I grew up. That's kind of a cool thing too. So this was created to basically destabilize the arms race. Is the triad. This was the third leg of the famous nuclear triad: land, sea, and air-based missiles. So the Air Force, had a monopoly on this for a good long time because they had intercontinental bombers, and then eventually in the 1950s got missiles that were powerful enough, like the Atlas and the Titan, which were the first intercontinental ballistic missiles. You might not know that because you think of the Atlas as launching Mercury capsules and the Titan as launching Gemini missiles. But those are the first missiles put in these hardened silos out in the middle of Montana and North Dakota and stuff. And the silos were supposed to be strong enough to, withstand a nuclear explosion so that you could second strike. Anyway, the air launch stuff, like the B-52s and whatever, became almost obsolete because they get shot down before they got there. But the sea-launched missiles was, let's put intercontinental, well, actually they're not ICBM range. They're called that, but their range isn't that long because they're submarines, and the submarines go underwater and they sneak up on you. And they launch these missiles really close. And you're not supposed to be able to find the submarine, and these missiles get launched. And your warning time is like 20% as much as you would have with an ICBM, and way, way less than if you were tracking a bomber flying across the North Pole. Yeah, I'm just looking for to do a little bit of touch up with this gray paint again. So this carried 16 Polaris submarine-launched ballistic missiles that could be launched from just a couple hundred miles from your shores, so that they would blow you up before you practically even knew they were launched. Just a huge, huge escalation of the arms race. And this was the very first one. Of course, it was named George Washington because he was the first president, right? So I think this is, since I'm painting this cutaway model of this submarine, it's a fine time to talk about nuclear Armageddon. of course, things improved. The Polaris only carried one warhead. As things progressed, they were replaced by the Poseidon. So the Poseidon had a multiple reentry. So instead of just being able to blow up 16 places with your missiles, once you got to the Poseidon, I think they initially carried 3. Now they probably carry more. So you could blow even more stuff. I'm going to paint the faces of the dials here. I'm going to look back at this so far, and in terms of the amount of paint that seems to have been applied, although there are many colors involved, it certainly doesn't seem to be much surface area, does it? It's like, wow, how long can this go on and not have anything happen? Anyway, so we ducked and covered, but we never got a fallout shelter because we thought, wow, that's cool. Having a fallout shelter would be really cool. But my dad didn't want to spend thousands of dollars. It was like a tenth, like 5% the cost of the entire house to have one of these prefabricated things buried in your yard. But I was saying there were 2 ways to get into it. You could get into it through a hatch, above ground, like a tornado shelter kind of thing, I guess. A hatch that you could open and pull down and lock from the inside, of course. Or you could tunnel in through your basement and have access through your house from the inside. So if the other thing that, just to make everything even better, back in the 60s and 70s, there were, apocalyptic television and TV shows. And a common theme would be, you'd hear the warning sirens. Now the sirens basically tell you if a tornado is coming or something, but they were originally set up. They were air raid sirens, essentially, and they went off, and they gave you, the advertised thing was we would have 15 minutes of warning, but it was really less than that. That's the amount of time it took from launch to of an ICBM to detonation. But when you heard this, you would go into your fallout shelter. So of course, the TV shows were showing what would happen if you had a fallout shelter, but your neighbors didn't. And you only had enough food and water for 2 weeks for your family, with a little bit extra. So if you let anybody else in, then there wouldn't be enough for everybody, and not everybody might survive. Okay. It's that. So it was like, do you get a fallout shelter? And if you do, it's pretty hard to keep it a secret because somebody was coming along with heavy equipment, digging a giant hole in your yard into which to install this. So all your neighbors knew you had one. So, of course, they were saying, "Mom, I don't need a fallout shelter because these people have fallout shelters and we'll just come and use theirs when the sirens go off." So basically, what we had was like the population just killing each other over access to fallout shelters. So that made fallout shelters seem like a really good deal. But in my family, my dad and my uncle had been in the Air Force. My dad for a while, and my uncle stayed in until he retired as, what was it, a full colonel, a bird colonel, or even a chicken colonel. Sometimes they call them those different things. And the response when we wanted this new playroom buried in our backyard, because that's what we thought it was. Well, that would be a really cool thing to have, wouldn't it? I don't think it was just the cost, but it was like, yeah, if the bombs fall, it's not going to matter. So don't pretend by getting this fallout shelter thing. So we were disappointed we never did get a fallout shelter in our backyard. So the other cool thing back there was they had these anti-aircraft missile bases all over the country. We don't have those anymore. But we did. They were Nike bases, Nike. Okay. And if you went to the state fair, the military would have a full scale mock up of one of these Nike missiles. They were pretty big. And you'd go into this tent because it was just a temporary setup. And they would show a movie. And the movie would show these, pictures of Soviet bombers flying. And then we'd hear the air raid sound kinds of things. Okay. And then they'd show pictures of the Nike base going into action where the doors would open above they had blast doors on them. They'd open up and the missile would raise up like at a 45, 60-degree angle, would go up. And then it would shoot. And they had a special effect kind of in that the lights would flash and you'd hear this booming sound, and then the model of the Nike missile. Well, as they were going up, that was the cool thing. As they were going up in the film that they were showing, the Nike missile that was sitting on a truck kind of thing actually raised up in synchrony, more or less, with them. So it was like we were there in the bunker as the Nike missile rose up on its platform. And then when it launched in the movie, there was this banging sound and the lights would flash and then the missile would be gone. And then in the movie, you would see the missile going up into the air and blowing up a plane. Those were the first drones. That's in the day when drone really meant what it meant, which was a non-piloted vehicle. And they used old airplanes that they didn't want to keep anymore. So instead of recycling them, they painted their wings orange and flew them by remote control, and then shot them with Nike missiles so that they could show movies at state fairs. How we would be protected by these missiles. Pretty cool. Yeah, so that's how that worked. But that was kind of fun because we knew we would definitely do that in the Army or Air Force. I think the Army ran those. They took it all very seriously, as did we, because that's how we were going to be protected against the air dropped missiles, bombs. So that's something you guys don't get anymore, is like a live demonstration simulation of anti-aircraft missile launch. Something that's lost to time. Anyway, we were very proud of the fact that we had these missiles and that they could be launched and they would protect us from incoming bombers. An important thing. I wonder if this white paint is, yeah, it's getting close to break time. So I'm going to just take a look at what's happening here. This needs a second coat, but it isn't quite dry yet. So that's another thing to do after break. And then I'm going to start painting green on this bulkhead and the tops of this one and these and bottom of this one for the control room and the gyro room. This side, I'm going to have to look at the box top. I think this side goes on the side where all the missile tubes, launch tubes are. I think this is like a dead area. I mean, there's nothing up here. It's just a walkway. I think that's painted dark gray, which is the hull color. I think these are green. And I think this is dark gray down here. So I'm not too worried about this side yet, but this side's going to take a little extra effort. And then this, if I've got the green paint out and I'm feeling really ambitious and I haven't broken anything, this also needs to be painted green. This is the bulkhead for the torpedo room. And if I actually get this ever done, I can install it. I can stick it in the hull of the submarine because the torpedo room is already finished. So let me get the do this again. I'll get the pinhead out and see if I can get these dial faces done kind of, well enough to be left alone. So yeah, the state fairs back then were really cool because you could play around inside a full-size fallout shelter and have the salespeople try to talk your parents into putting one in their backyard, and all you knew is that you really wanted one. It would be the coolest. It would be a really cool thing to have. But we never got one, and as far as I know, none of my neighbors ever did either. So we could never have a gun battle, as we were trying to force our way into our neighbor's fallout shelter. So we'd miss out on the stuff that we saw on TV. But as I was saying, my uncle stayed active in the Air Force for quite a long time. And he actually worked in the military air transport side, which was the logistics side of the Air Force. But oftentimes those were located in the same place as the Strategic Air Command bases. A lot of those were up north because you wanted to station the bombers as close to what their targets would be as possible. So he got to spend some time in lovely vacation spots like Fairbanks, Alaska. And Goose Bay, Newfoundland. You should look up Goose Bay. That is like about as far away from everything as you could possibly get. So he worked in logistics up there. They moved officers were relocated like every 2 years. I think it was every 2 or 3 years. You'd get a promotion. So, you get a promotion and you get to move from Goose Bay to a warmer climate like Fairbanks. So anyway, what I was saying is because he was still active in the Air Force and got to hang out near the Strategic Air Command bases, go to the officers' club and get drunk because basically your job was to destroy the world with a moment's notice. I mean, that was a good time. He pretty much just said, don't bother with any of that stuff because if World War III breaks loose, nobody's going to survive it. So I guess that word got out, and the people who were trying to make a living selling these fallout shelters at the state fairs, they were there for like a couple of years and then they disappeared. They didn't come back. So talk about job destroying, right? I mean, certain political parties are always, everything is job destroying. That really was job destroying. It was like, oh, you're not going to survive a nuclear attack. Don't buy a fallout shelter. It's just a waste of time and money. And the next thing you know is that the fallout shelter salespeople and the manufacturers and their whole supply chain, all of that just crashed and burned, so to speak. Yep. The whole industry just poofed because it was pointless. But think of all the jobs that killed. Okay, well, it turned out okay. See the little dials? They look okay. Yeah, so I'm going to take this off and definitely need to recharge it after this stream. I meant to do that after the last one, but I didn't because, remembering things. Yeah, this is good. I'm filling a lot of time with nuclear Armageddon and memories about that. But anyway, my uncle, who was in the Air Force, told us that you really just shouldn't even bother because if things go flying, no one's going to survive. And there were just amazing things. Like every once in a while, there would be this discussion about this new ICBM came out and it carried 1 megaton warheads. And so we'd get this map of the city that we were living in. And it was assumed that the 1 megaton warhead that would be aimed at our city would be aimed at the airport because there was a National Guard air base there, a refueling base. So that became the military target. And then they show this map of the city with concentric circles. Okay, so there would be if you were inside this concentric circle, you would be like vaporized. Okay. And if you were inside the next concentric circle, you would probably be pulverized. You wouldn't be vaporized, but all this debris and things that would be flying around would probably just pulverize you. And the next concentric circle is, well, you'd probably just be immolated because the debris wouldn't fly that far, but the thermal energy from the blast would set everything afire. So you go from vaporized to pulverized to immolated. And then outside that circle would be your 50% survival ring. Okay. And then your 75% survival ring. And then and then it's, you'd probably see the flash and duck and cover and be okay ring, as long as you could get to your fallout shelter and eat your crackers and yellow and red candies for 2 weeks. So we would always really pay attention to these maps because we wanted to see what ring we were in. And I think we were living right on the edge of the immolation ring, the outer edge of that. Okay. So we didn't quite have a 50% chance of survival. We weren't in that ring. We were too close to the airport at that time. But yeah. So that was a really helpful thing that our newspapers would publish. I think I remember seeing those every couple of years. There'd be some discussion of yields of weapons, mainly our weapons, and what it would mean if it were launched against our city. So yeah, that was all part of growing up at that period of time. It was, yeah, it's kind of interesting stuff. Fun facts. So there's still some challenges left. There's the inside of the door frame here, and I was thinking I would be painting the inside of this door frame. Yeah, I will. The green color that goes, no, the light blue color that goes on this side. The door, you can see the edge of the door here. This is the light blue, but this will need another coat. And it's kind of leveling off. I might actually give that a really light sanding right along the top of the lockers there before I put another coat on. So that's going to have to dry for quite a while. But I think I'm going to end up painting green next. This needs to be green. This is green. This is green. And this one, the one I've been avoiding because I know it's going to be really difficult to paint. That one's green. The other side of this, there's a lot of green on this one too, but should paint that first or what? And then the other side of this is painted the light blue. Anyway, it's about time for a break. We'll continue our discussion of what it was like growing up in the 50s and 60s. I have more anecdotes that I can tell you about that. No, a little bit more maybe about air defense and movies and TV shows, but also maybe I can get into the Cuban Missile Crisis a little bit. Yeah. We were privy to a tiny, tiny little smidgen of inside information during the Cuban Missile Crisis from my uncle who was in the Air Force. So if I remember and we start talking about that, I'll do that. This is the color I'm going to be using. I hope that the consistency of the paint is good because I'm just using a tiny brush and painting little bits all around all this detail. Okay. So I'm going to be putting tiny dots of paint in a lot of areas, and I hope it levels nicely. I mean, it was fine when I painted a big surface area, but I don't know, we'll see. And I probably want, what kind of brushes I've got to work with here. This one's going to be too big for what I'm doing. I might need something like this with a really soft bristle where I can go across and even the paint as much as possible. Yeah. So the top of this, the cabinets, the lockers here, and this here is where this sits. Okay. Sits like that. So you can see it's on the top of that and right under the control panel. So I want the green paint to go down to that spot. Okay. And then underneath it, this prong here gets painted the light blue color. And then the other floor, the one you can't see, this is the floor of the mess hall. That goes there. And then underneath it is painted the green again. So that's how these things work. So it makes it look like that desk is sort of, but not quite sitting on the floor because of the precision of the manufacturing is nowhere near the precision of the design work that was done. Actually, this is backward. Goes in this way. Doesn't much matter at first. Anyway, that's kind of how these things get put together. So I'm going to be back and after break, and we're going to try to paint these things that have all this very carefully done detail on them green color without painting on the details so that I have to redo it all. Don't want to redo painstaking work. Why is it called painstaking? I don't know. I mean, it didn't hurt that much when I was doing it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing about nuclear Armageddon, and we'll continuing that discussion after break as I continue to work on the highly destabilizing strategic weapon, the nuclear submarine, ballistic missile launching nuclear submarine George Washington. Yeah, great stuff. Anyway, I'll be back in about half an hour. See you then. And we're back. Yeah, working on trying to get the camera kind of, okay here. Yeah, working on this submarine thing. Let's see. Yeah, it's not too bad. That evened out. It needs another coat, but it's still kind of wet. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to try to paint some of this green. I'm going to start with this one because this is going to be really a difficult one to paint, and might as well start with a really difficult one. Get to talk about more nuclear Armageddon stuff. So when I was growing up, okay, we had fallout shelters and duck and cover. And Nike anti-aircraft missiles. We actually had a Nike base near our city, near the airport, because that's where the refueling planes were. They still are, which made it a legitimate military target. So there was actually a golf course right near there. I think it was from one of the tees. There was this big razor wire fence all around it, but there were, I think, maybe 6 Nike missiles. You would think like you'd have maybe 100 of them, right, to shoot down the bombers, but there was maybe a half dozen, maybe 10 or something. Oh, it's not playing. Let me push this button and see if it works. That's supposed to make it play. No. There we go. Now the counter is counting anyway, so that means the music is supposed to be playing. At least that's my visual cue that it's there. So yeah, I guess if they're going to send over bombers to bomb a military target like a air refueling base, that they wouldn't be sending it wasn't like in World War II where you had to saturate bomb everything, where it took like 1,000 bombers to hit a ball bearing plant. Because, it wasn't very precise. It was a joke, Close doesn't count except in 2 things, horseshoes and nuclear weapons. So there was that. Anyway, yeah, we had this Nike base, and from one of the tees of this golf course, which was right near the barbed wire, razor wire fence around it, you could see the tops of a couple of the bunkers where the missiles were stored. And that was kind of cool to know that while we were playing golf, we were well protected. It's one of those clips on here as well, because I'm going to be painting all the way down near the bottom. This is going to go in this way. So I'm going to clip it on the side that is away from the front of the submarine. can't remember when they decommissioned it. It's probably, not too long after we were playing golf there. But they decided that they weren't going to use those anymore. And so they stopped maintaining it, and we were no longer protected by Nike anti-aircraft weapons. So what they had instead is instead of putting anti-aircraft weapons around all the cities, figuring that if they got that far, if the bombers got that far, that was a problem anyway. So they started developing and were successful at getting these interceptor aircraft. We call them fighters, like the F-104 Starfighter, and the F-106. But they weren't really fighters in the sense of, when we think of World War II fighters and dogfights and that kind of thing. They were designed to fly very fast in pretty much a straight line for not very much range, and they were supposed to be stationed in places so that they would intercept bombers, and that was their whole purpose, is they would just fly very, very fast with some missiles to shoot down bombers. And then those were determined to be a more effective anti-aircraft kind of thing than the Nikes. And so we lost our Nike base because of that, because of interceptors. And we didn't get interceptors at our airport. That would have been kind of cool, because those were really pretty amazing planes. I mean, they were kind of single use, they're only good for one thing, but apparently they were, because then, no bombers came that they had to shoot down. Anyway, we lost our Nike base, and then they stopped doing the Nike simulation at the state fair, and that was all very sad. Really kind of missed that. Having these guys in uniform very, very seriously showing us how they were going to protect us against air attack. That was all part of growing up then. And that's... it didn't look too bad. There's not much clearance here around some of these features. Much room to get your brush in there. But it was kind of cool, when we were playing golf, to be able to see the thing that was protecting us from. We got some there. That's a pretty easy thing to touch up, at least. The hatch hinge there. That will take yet another dot of that neutral gray paint. I've been putting lots of little dots of neutral gray paint on things today. There's another opportunity to do that. So, yeah, despite being near a legitimate military target like the air refueling base, and being right on the edge of the boundary between certain immolation and a 50% survival rate, never did get our fallout shelter installed in our backyard. And then they stopped selling those at the state fair, and that was disappointing, because I always liked hanging out there listening to the fallout shelter sales guy. Anyway, yeah. I blame my uncle, who was still in the active Air Force, who persuaded my father that if there were a nuclear attack, it would, the fallout shelter wouldn't be useful. The only thing it'd be useful for would be having the neighbors all try to get in and get to have a gun battle on the hatch. They were pounding on, "Don't let us die, you can save us." And we'd be saying, "Oh, no, we couldn't. If you came in here, none of us would survive. There's only enough supplies for our family." That kind of drama. We didn't get to have that. So then the Cuban Missile Crisis came along, and that was an interesting time. We were watching it on TV and all of that. Got to see the pictures of the missiles in Cuba, where they showed us proof that this thing was happening, and there were more newspaper articles with concentric circles because we more or less knew the range of the intermediate range IRBMs, intermediate range ballistic missiles, that were being stationed in Cuba. And we were really very happy because, we looked at those concentric circles with great interest and saw that our city was outside of the range of them. So it was like, well, that's good. Because we'd only have, instead of 15 minutes warning, like 5 minutes warning or something. We were about to have to duck and cover. But one thing I noticed is that my dad he was seriously afraid. We're all kind of afraid, because we're on the brink of nuclear war. It's like blockading and ships on the high seas and doing all these kind of dangerous things. But my dad was actually really very anxious, because it turned out, this is a true story, that my uncle, who was in active service in the... What a sentence. What sentence are you talking about? Anyway, whatever. He was active in the Air Force, okay? And he although he worked in logistics, he was located near SAC bases. They shared the air base. They just had different kinds of planes. So my dad he gets this call from my uncle, which didn't happen very often. It's not cheap to call from like Goose Bay or whatever. Back then, there was a thing called long distance, and you didn't just get long distance, right? You had to pay for it, to go through an operator. You couldn't even direct dial. That was a big deal, getting direct dial long distance. And I had to go through an operator to get access through long distance. So I get a call. He gets a call from his brother, my uncle. This is probably like top secret information. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it's this call, and he gets off the phone, and he's looking kind of actually shaken. And he says, "They're painting the markings off of the planes." This is actually a real thing that happened. Okay. So like the serial numbers, the tail numbers, and identifying some of those identifying information and stuff. They were painting those out. And you don't do that, okay? And you don't just do that because you get extra paint laying around, you're not sure what to do with it. You're doing that because you're going to be sending those planes out. Yeah. So what basically he was saying was, this is real. They're getting ready to launch. There were kind of, some sort of tense and quiet moments in the household until that thing was resolved. There's not too much touch-up to be doing. I was expecting, like with these pipes here, that it would not go as well as it sort of is. What happens is that, if the paint creeps up from the tip of the brush, then if it touches, you want to keep the paint right at the tip of the brush and not have it creep up, because if those creeping up places touch, just get spots like that little green spot there that I will need to touch up. Well, this is wrong. Okay, it's not going to need a second coat. This paint it looks kind of scabby sometimes. I'm hoping that the case here is that it tends to level fairly well, even if it doesn't look like it is. As it dries, it flattens out, so to speak. To almost silent mode here. There's a lot of tiny little spots to paint around. It's going to be difficult to get to. Anyway, that's the story about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so we had this inside information. They're painting the markings off of the planes. That was very discomforting. So the real issue there, not the real problem, wasn't so much the missiles in Cuba, because those weren't even operational yet. Okay. And as we saw from the maps with all the cool concentric circles on, that were very helpfully published in our newspaper, we knew we were out of range of them anyway, so they didn't pose a danger to us. So that wasn't the issue at all. We didn't care about the missiles in Cuba because they couldn't reach us. And in fact, they couldn't be used. They weren't even like assembled yet, and their warheads weren't installed. So that wasn't it. It was all the other missiles, there's all the other bombs that could be launched. So, yeah, that's the story of why we didn't ever get a fallout shelter. knew that the Cuban Missile Crisis was no joke. It was, we really were preparing to blow up the world. It was quite an event. So then we got a whole lot more interested in the concentric circles. So another fun thing about them is that you have this sense that bigger is better, right? So if you've got a 1 megaton, it's just going to be that much better, right? I mean, it's like 5 times more megatonnage. But we say those words now like we know what they mean. But, the only bombs that we've ever really dropped on anybody in a military sense are the ones that we dropped on Japan. And we talk about how destructive that was, right? But what people don't really realize, I mean, if they thought about it, they would know, but it's not something that was terribly much discussed, and that is that those bombs were like 15% of 1 megaton. Okay, these were itty bitty little bombs compared to the thermonuclear weapons that were kind of widely deployed in the 50s and 60s. We started talking about megatons. Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were kilotons. Familiar with megabytes and kilobytes, so we know what those words all mean now. Well, okay, almost lost it. So yeah, those were little bitty baby bombs, hardly deserving of being considered a tactical nuclear weapon, low yield nuclear weapon that you could launch with your atomic cannon. There was such a thing. The cannon wasn't atomic, but it was designed to launch atomic shells, little A-bombs that you would shoot out of a cannon, right? We had really cool weapons back then. Renwall, the maker of the submarine, made a model of the atomic cannon. You can still get reproductions of them. They reproduced it as kind of an anniversary edition or something like that. Why not celebrate that? And you should actually look it up, because the cover art is really outstanding. It is this gigantic cannon on a truck. It was designed to be mobile. Because you want to launch your atomic weapons. And so there's all these, the crew are all standing around. And then in the background of the picture of the gigantic, it was a very large cannon. Because, if you're firing a nuclear warhead, you kind of want it to explode, some distance away from you. So in the cover art, in the background is a big mushroom cloud. just so that you knew that they just launched a nuclear device. Pretty amazing. Yeah, and it was made by the company that made this. But that was a real thing. A cannon that launched an atomic low yield, teeny little bomb, like the one we dropped on Japan. Anyway, what I was saying is you would think that bigger is better, but when it comes to nuclear weapons, that turned out actually not to be the case. Especially when it became possible to MIRVing multiple independent reentry vehicles. So that you miniaturize these warheads, and you could put more than one on a missile, and each one could actually go to a different place. That's almost all of our missiles now are like that. They're MIRVed. Not like MIRV Griffin or something like that. Okay, I'm not sure what that's all about. We hope they're playing. The dogs are barking and running everywhere. I'm going to use a little bit bigger brush on this part. So anyway, yeah, you'd think bigger is better, and we kind of grew up, and back in the 50s, it was a thing to make more and more gigantic yielding weapons. I'm trying to remember. I think the largest one, we had a really big one, but I think the Soviets had the biggest one, something like 50 megatons or something. It was a big explosion. But it turned out that wasn't very effective as a weapon, because if you drew your concentric circles of you went from vaporization to pulverization to immolation to 50% survival rate. If you drew those concentric circles, like if you doubled the yield of your warhead from maybe 5 megatons to 10 megatons, your circles didn't get twice as big. So each increase in yield wasn't really increasing destructive power. I mean, it did increase the destruction power. What I mean was the radius of destruction. You didn't get to vaporize more people further out by the same percentage as the yield in the weapon. And so the decision was, so like, for example, instead of going from half a megaton, 50% of a megaton to a full megaton, you weren't really gaining that much in terms of the ability to vaporize people and things. So what we were able to do, and this ended up making actually a lot of sense in a way. So, yeah, I was trying to touch up this one little dot, right? This one little spot. And then I got green paint, not on the red part where I was trying to touch it up, but on the red part that I didn't want to touch. So now I get to paint the red back over where I painted the green. What a pain. Sometimes that happens. More often than not, I find that happens to me, that when it's just like this one little dot, and it's like, no, Greg, leave it alone, leave it alone. But no, don't leave it alone. Try to touch it up. And you have to come back in the other direction. Okay, well, this turned out kind of okay. Most of the detail is there. A lot of that unevenness, kind of scabbiness, kind of disappears as the paint dries because it's a variation, not so much in elevation, but in brightness. And I got some touch up, a little gray there. Yeah, I need to do this, the top of this box. So, as I was saying, this ended up making more sense. So, like if you're going from a half a megaton to a megaton, and you're not looking at much increase in size in the warhead or anything, so it's not like you're looking at any more difficulty in delivering it, but by doubling it, you haven't doubled the area of disintegration, much less doubling the area of 50% survival rate or anything like that. So what you do, instead of going from like a half a megaton to a megaton, what you do is you send 2 half megaton warheads over. Okay. And maybe even 3 if you really, like if you've got a really big area you want to obliterate, like you want to obliterate, I don't know, not Dallas, because in the 1950s, Dallas wasn't nearly the size it is now, but Denver. Okay, we'll pick Denver because it's near the Air Force Academy and the Strategic Air Command headquarters and all of that. So if you really wanted to obliterate Denver, you'd say, okay, well, let's drop a big bomb, like 10 megatons on it or something. No, what you do is you take 3 half megaton bombs and you place them so that the 50% survival rate circles just barely intersect. And now you've got this massive area where you've got 3 disintegration zones and 3 pulverization zones and 3 immolation zones, just doing like a Venn diagram kind of thing, right? Except that you don't overlap them that much. Just make sure that the 50% survival rate edges just sort of overlap a little bit. So it takes 3 warheads to do that instead of 1, but you end up getting more destruction with those 3 1.5 megaton warheads than you would with like even a 15 or 20 megaton warhead. And you use up a whole lot less valuable fissionable material and fusionable material in doing it too. So that was just, part of the calculus, as you say. It wasn't really, I'm sure they used calculus, of course, in, deciding the launches of the missiles and all that. But, okay, well, there's kind of minimal touch up here. I've got one just right around this alarm thing. Okay. Sorry, I touched it up and I got green on the red, but then there's another spot of red on the other side. Get the green close enough. There. I'll come back with I think maybe if I get this spot, I might just touch a tiniest little touch of red on there. And then this will be done. So do I tackle another one? Since I roll here with the green paint. Maybe I will. Maybe I've been putting this off for a good long time, and this will take up probably almost the rest of the stream, is the forward torpedo room bulkhead. that I painted ages ago. I just picked Denver because, you know, it was a place. Could have blown up Chicago. I could have blown up, you know, Washington, D.C. is just too obvious. And it's not that big, you know, so you probably wouldn't need as many weapons. But, yeah, anyway, just talking about how much sense it made to use a number of smaller warheads than big ones. And so there are very, very few warheads now that are more than maybe like a half a megaton. You know, I guess you could say that's kind of comforting. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, so it became it just made a whole lot more sense from many perspectives to blow things up using a number of smaller nuclear warheads. Although smaller in this case is still like four times more than the bombs we dropped on Japan, but still, you know, in the scheme of things, it was they're smaller than they could be. Okay, so let's just start diving into putting more bits of green paint on this bulkhead. This is going to take a while. There's lots of little things to go around here. Hatches. These are the torpedo tube hatches. And so we want to paint up to those, but not over them. There's this clock here. We need to go around that. Junction boxes. Yeah. I guess the camera is kind of far away. I'll apologize for that, but I can't really get it too terribly much closer. It started bumping into my head. So you're just going to have to, every once in a while, maybe I'll lift this up and show you what I'm doing, like I'm cleaning a brush or something. At this point, I should go into my first of the design engineers. We're deciding that it would be really great to have all of this amazing, incredible detail in their bulkhead. Like every little bolt on the hatch, you know, they had to put into their design. What were they thinking? Little bolts even on the junction boxes. And yet, on the other hand, some of the other stuff was manufactured in such a way that there is like no detail at all. You can barely recognize the chairs for being chairs. You know, painting this like 1 square millimeter at a time is unfortunately going to take quite a while. Be very careful in not ruining all the detail that was printed on here and in some cases painted. junction boxes. This peg is going to show. So we'll disguise that by painting it green. Anyway, our military planners obviously made a very rational decision when they decided that it's all great fun for you who are, experimenting and playing around with this and all the, just prove you can make a 50 megaton bomb. Yeah, you did it, so now you got a 50 megaton bomb, but for us here who are trying to destroy things, that really just doesn't do us any good. So yay for you, but give us a whole bunch of small half megaton. Doesn't that sound sad? It's not even a full megaton, it's only a half a megaton. So just give us a bunch of those and we'll destroy more stuff than we can with your gigantic ones. I can imagine, the debates that went on. The people who just wanted bigger ones. Well, the Soviets are deploying all of their warheads are 2 megatons or larger. Yeah, but they can't deliver them the way we do, and besides, if we target ours correctly, we will evaporate and pulverize way more stuff than they will with theirs. So they can brag about that, but they're just being wasteful and silly. Anyway, the smaller bomb people won out. So the other thing that happened, this is probably more political than practical, but it ended up costing huge amounts of resources, is to blame the Air Force for this, I think, is the nuclear triad of air, sea, and ground-based weapons. So the Air Force got 2 of those. They got 2 of the 3. They got to do airplanes, dropping bombs out of airplanes, kind of the good old-fashioned thing. But the Air Force also got the ICBMs. So the original liquid-fueled rockets like the Atlases and the Titans. Okay, they got to put those in silos out in the middle of nowhere. But then it became clear you launched a missile, there was a pretty good chance it was going to get through, because they talk about hypersonic cruise missiles and all of that now, but these ICBMs were way beyond hypersonic, because they would be going like 15,000 miles an hour before they got to their apogee and ballistically and later independently targeted down to their targets. So, they were going fast enough that they weren't going to get hit. We spent a lot of time and money. I'll digress a little bit. I remember Ronald Reagan's anti-ballistic missile to do what's called Star Wars. some defense contractor who wanted a couple $2 billion convinced Reagan that we could shoot down the warheads of the Soviets' ballistic missiles. So they got to play around with giant lasers and missiles that basically they were bullets. Okay, we tried to hit the target with a kinetic weapon. There were some funny bits. It's like, wow, look at this laser. Watch how it works. And what they did was they shot the laser at a stationary rocket. Okay. It was just kind of standing there on the launch pad. They shot the laser at it and it blew up. It was, look, wow, this laser can, hit a missile. Well, the thing about it is that, first of all, the missile was just standing there. So it was not exactly realistic. Instead of traveling at 15,000 miles streaking through the upper atmosphere, it was just standing on a launch pad, basically. So that was silly. And the other is that the warheads separate from the missile before they start coming down at you. And so, blowing up a missile doesn't prove anything because, the missile part isn't there anymore. It's just the warheads. But it was, okay, well, let's dump another $500 million or $1 billion on this effort because this laser blew up a missile that was standing still. Anyway, what became apparent was that the pride of the Air Force, the strategic bombers, the thing that worked so well in World War II, they weren't going to get through to their targets, and so they were kind of a useless thing. So venerable bombers like the B-52 and so on were proving themselves to be obsolete. So we said, well, if we can only have bombers that are more like missiles, we could just have missiles, right? No, but we wanted, if we're going to keep the triad, the sacred triad of air, sea, and land-launched nuclear weapons, we needed to keep the air part. So we needed to keep that part of the triad going. Like there's a little junction box there I didn't even see before. Sort of painted over it. If I really care, I'm not sure I will. I might come back and touch that up with a little bit of like gray paint or something. Anyway, that's how we ended up. It was like, well, let's make our planes more like missiles. We could have said, well, let's just make our missiles like missiles, right? Which is what they were. But no, so they need to fly faster and higher. That gave us the supersonic bombers. The first one was the B-58, called Hustler, which is kind of an unfortunate name because I think it meant hustles, like goes fast. But Hustler could also mean, kind of a charlatan, snake oil salesperson kind of thing. Anyway, it might have been intentional. So they stuck 4 jet engines on this very, actually at the time, small delta wing plane. So it did go very fast. It was so small that it couldn't carry its weapons in a traditional bomb bay kind of setting. So they hung a pod on the outside of it, which induced drag and all those other airflow kinds of things. Anyway, it was supersonic. It did go very fast, but it couldn't go very far because they had 4 jet engines, and back then they were not efficient at all. They were very much fuel guzzlers. But it was really cool. I mean, we saw all sorts of public relations stuff about it. We got all excited about the supersonic bomber. It was a very pretty airplane, actually. But as a strategic bomber, it was pointless because it couldn't go far enough, so it needed to be fueled like 4 times or something before it could get to its target. But it was one of the kind of cool things that we could do back in the 50s and 60s, is build something like that. Anyway, that wasn't anywhere near cool enough. So one of the coolest planes ever built was the B-70 Valkyrie. It was designed to be a much bigger bomber. It could fly like at 3 times the speed of sound. Not careful with turning the corner there, here between the junction, across the top of these junction boxes. So we built 2 of these things. It looked like a striking Cobra. It was big delta wings, 6 humongous turbojet engines, little winglets in front for stability. It was actually a beautiful plane. Fortunately, one of them was lost, and a person killed because there was a mid-air collision. You gotta love this, right? So this amazing prototype bomber, just huge leaps in technology in terms of manufacturing and dealing with the heat, the friction that happened at those speeds, the range and everything. This amazing engineering thing was actually flying and working kind of as designed. And there was a mid-air collision during a photo shoot. Seriously, what happened was they were flying these planes in formation, and like people taking pictures will say things like, you're standing on the edge of a cliff, right? And it's a little further back, just a bit more, until someone just plummets off the edge of the cliff. Well, that actually happened. I mean, essentially that is what happened, in that it was like, oh, get closer, just a little bit more this way, look up, that kind of stuff going on with the photographers. And yeah, one of the planes then just got in too close, collided with the bomber. The fighter pilot plunged to their death. One of the 2 bomber pilots, the escape capsule actually did eject as it was designed, but the door didn't close properly. Anyway, yeah, it was a disaster. And so the project was essentially never going to go anywhere. As a proof of concept, it was amazing. I mean, it was a beautiful airplane that did things that planes just don't do anymore. But it was never going to work as a strategic bomber, really. In fact, nothing is ever going to work as a strategic bomber. It just isn't going to happen. So, anyway, yeah, there's still one of the two survived. It's in the Museum of the Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, and if you ever have a chance, you should go and look at it, because it's a pretty cool piece of American Cold War era aeronautical engineering. Okay, this paint is starting to gel up on me. Anyway, then the B-1 came along, swing-wing supersonic bomber, which was also a pretty cool plane, and it's still being used and flown, but it would never work as a strategic bomber for the same reason nothing else would, because it would just get shot down. So what the Air Force ended up doing is like, okay, well, we did our best to make our airplanes like missiles. Okay. But we still need these. Instead of just having missiles be missiles, we still need the third leg of the triad, because, you know, it's what we do now. We have, why else? It's the triad. You have to have the triad. But what they did instead was, well, if we can't make our airplanes like missiles, we'll just put missiles on our airplanes. And they did. So what the way things are supposed to work now is that your intercontinental bombers never get close to places where they can get shot down, and they shoot cruise missiles. So instead of making the airplanes more like missiles, they just put missiles on the airplanes. But in so doing, preserved the triad. And that was the whole point. Now, we still have B-1s, and they still can carry thermonuclear weapons, but in the form of cruise missiles, not bombs that would be dropped. And so the Air Force still gets two legs of the triad, maintaining a 2-to-1 win over the Navy, which only has the sea-launched ballistic missiles, the first of which was this thing I'm building, the first of which was the George Washington, which launched Polaris missiles, ballistic missiles, not intercontinental, because their range isn't that far, but yep. So I am working on a model of the very first, they called it a prototype, the very first of the third leg of the triad. Pretty cool. So as I was reading the box top about this is really bizarre. This submarine, the real one, not the one I'm making, was completed ahead of schedule and under budget. And so, as I was making very slow progress on getting this thing done, as you can see, painting around all of this stuff is slow. This is very slow progress on getting this done, because I decided to paint all of this detail that I didn't need to, but is getting painted anyway. I started joking that this would take as long to build as building the original submarine. I think in reality, this is actually going to take longer to build than the actual submarine took. I'm serious. I think that that's actually going to be the case. It will not be more expensive, though. You know, even though like the price of all of these paints I'm using and things has gone up, and I think per ounce is like 5 times more expensive than house paint or something. You're paying for little bottles, you know, the packaging, right? Yeah, I think this submarine model is actually going to take longer to build than the original. Because after I made that joke, then I read the box, the instructions. They have a little blurb about the George Washington there, and yeah, it was completed ahead of schedule. They built a never before built submarine. They had nuclear powered submarines already, so that wasn't new. But a missile launching submarine with all sorts of new technology and stuff, believe it or not, faster than they planned to. Maybe they were just really good at planning and built a lot of extra time into the schedule. Sometimes you can do that, right? And your boss comes and says, and that's a skill you really should have if you don't already, is how long will it take to do that? Well, if you think it's going to take like a week and a half, the last thing you want to do is say, well, less than 2 weeks. Because things might come up. You might have an opportunity to go out to lunch, and it's a longer lunch because the restaurant was really good and you like the people you're hanging out with. And things can happen that can get in the way of completing it as quickly as you think it can be done. So you never do that. You say 4 weeks. It's like, well, that's too long. Can you make that, faster? And it's like, I don't know. I don't want to be cutting corners on something this important, but I can probably shorten that by like 3 days. Okay. So it takes 3.5 weeks. It's like, well, you better get it done then, because we need this as soon as possible. So you give yourself like a week more than you actually need to make this happen. And so when you get it done, and you can have your lunch, you can do that because you built some extra time in. So when you get it done, it takes you like, you said it would really only be a week and a half. You knew it would be a week and a half to get it done. So you get it done in 2 weeks and 1 day, which is more than a week under. Well, you don't want to cut it by that much, because then your boss might start catching on that you've padded the schedule, right? If you build that much extra time in. So what you do is you get it done. You said it would take little more than 3 weeks, and a couple of days is you come in like 2 days under 3 weeks. Turn the project in, but you have to look exhausted. you have to be like just really white. Said, boss, we just put like every extra effort in the existence of effort into this, and we got it done 4 days early. You know, and then you get kind of a wonderful brusque kind of thank you for that. Maybe a little extra bonus or something. If you were smart, you would have built that in up front. Do we get a bonus for beating our projections in terms of getting it done sooner than we could? And you want the bonus because, of course, you know, in order to get it done more quickly, you have to pay for a lot of overtime. There's just expenses. Time is money. If you want more time, you got to put up the money. Anyway, yeah. So the submarine was actually finished ahead of schedule. Or, you know, for whatever reason they put the extra effort in, or they padded the schedule, or whatever the strategy was there, it came in that way. And so now, you know, the semi-joke that I made about this will take as long as the original being funny because it's going to take longer than the original. Yeah, building this little model submarine is probably going to take longer than it took to complete the original prototype, first ever ballistic missile launching nuclear submarine. Not something to be proud of, probably. Okay, when I finished with this bit here, fire extinguishers, I'm going to get a slightly larger brush so that I can more smoothly apply it to these larger areas than I can with this tiny brush. And then there's some touching up to do. The other one that I painted, and as it turns out also on this one, by the time I get the outside of this painted, it is, and most of it is some of it's the junction box color, just little spots on some of the junction boxes, or this gray that I've been using a lot. I've been doing a lot of touching up with the gray, the neutral gray, because there are just lots of spots to be touched with that color. So after I finish painting the rest of the green onto here, no, I'm going to knock that over. It's a glass jar full of alcohol. Alcohol will evaporate, but there's that. Another mixing. Okay, I'm painting up to the edges. I've been holding it by the edges. I want to put it on one of these stands so that I can paint up to the edges. That was foresightful. I did that before I started spreading paint all over the place. Yay me. I think I can use a brush this big. I think I can safely do that. Oh. Once I finish this bulkhead, assuming, I get the touching up done. Doesn't look like it needs a second coat anywhere. I'll be able to install it into the submarine. And, well, actually, this is the final bit for the forward torpedo room, which was the very, very first thing completed in the submarine. And I have to say that this turned out to be adequately. I keep aiming for adequately, and I think I might have achieved it here. And you can see his variations in the paint here, largely having to do with differences in reflectivity, which has a lot to do with how close this is to drying or not. Some areas around the dial that are a little bit bright, and I think that'll be okay. I'm just looking for spots where there isn't any, where there might have been, especially around these conduits where the coverage might not be quite correct. So what I've got, this spot here is black, and it needs to be that gray color. I thought I used the blue-gray for the junction boxes. Yeah, junction boxes and lockers. It's weird. That color looks like this gray color, but it's really that one. At least that's what it's supposed to be. So when I've used this green paint before, it was like, oh my God, look at the brush marks and things. And then after it dried, it looked like it leveled out really quite nicely. So I'm hoping the same thing happens here. Is that what look like major surface variations are just variations in reflectivity. So there's really not too much touching up to do on this. Just that one spot that got painted wrong the first time. The dials all kind of came out okay. The junction boxes, yeah, not too terribly much on that. I've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to clean this brush as much as I can. And yeah, what else can I talk about? So yeah, the triad, I thought that was really kind of interesting, is that what happened was, in order to make the planes more like missiles, and they did, they even called the B-70, I think, was called the manned missile. Back to B-1. I don't know. It's not like we had B-78 or B-89 or B-92 or anything, but at some point, I think it was after the B-70, they went back to B-1, maybe because they abandoned that trajectory of things in terms of the kinds of use of the planes. But let's see, I do have some serious touching up to do with this one. And the same color, this neutral gray that I have been using tiny little bits of paint for. I could be doing again this. And then there's a little spot of red, if I recall. I'll check it again to see if I really need to make that change. Yeah, so in order to continue the triad, they had to make their planes more like missiles, and eventually just said, we're just going to use missiles. So, but we still have it. We still have an active triad of nuclear deterrence. You have to call it that. It's nuclear deterrence. It's not nuclear, we're going to blow you up with our bombs. That's the whole point of having, bombs to destroy the world. I think every year there was a calculation of how many times can we destroy the world with the weapons that we have. It was just always more than enough, let's say, to not have to worry about messing with it any further. There's these things up here. I probably should paint those a different color. I just totally forgot about them. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be. They don't look like, they're just round things. Maybe I'll just use, I guess I will try to paint them. They're important because that's where people who control the submarine sit. Yeah. The hinge here on the door. Maybe what I'll do is I'll either paint them, see these here? Same sort of round things. Maybe I'll just paint them this dark gray color. And that seemed to work for some of these other control things on these panels. I just want them to be seen since they're there and it's important. I could paint them. They're not really dials. I don't want to paint them white with the markings on. Need to decide sooner or later, don't I? So this didn't turn out too badly. There's still a little variation, but it's mainly reflectivity. So yeah, you just have to get those 3 dial things painted something. Almost tempted to use that dark green. That turned out kind of cool. This one. Right there. I'm going to do that. That's kind of a nice color. I'll see if I can make that work. If it doesn't, I'll be doing more touch-up with this gray paint because That's the color of touching up today. You know, I'm waiting for this one. It's off camera now. Waiting for that to dry so that I can do the one little spot of touch up with the with this color. But the dark green, that's what it's called, dark green, is going to be the color of those three things on the control panel there. So, although not too terribly much in terms of surface area has been painted today, I have made pretty decent progress in terms of getting some paint onto these bulkheads. I'm getting closer and closer to the point of no return in having to fabricate the adjustments to the floor and to the two things that go onto it, because, as I said, it's a 1/10 of an inch too short here and a 1/10 of an inch too long there, and each of these three tubes is a different length, and all three of them are wrong. But what is nice about this is that I have added to my parts that are finished pile or layout. These parts were finished before. I have now added, this one is not quite done, and it's actually the same color that needs touching up as on there, so that'll be good. I'll be able to touch that up at the same time. I'm adding parts to this is finished pile, and I now have paint that is, wow, that's the color I want. And the cap is like glued on. Okay, there's an alternative to this, but it's the same color. It's a new bottle. Okay, I'm running out of time. This isn't going to get, I really wanted to finish this, but it's not going to get done until next time. I want to get if I use this other color, and I just do tiny little touches, I will have 2 more parts to add to the done pile. And I can get these done for sure, and that other one is just going to have to wait. This one's really close to being done on this side, but it needs a second coat, and then the other side needs to be painted. So that's going to have to wait. But yeah, I didn't notice those before. And it's really too bad that those weren't painted then. But it is what it is. So we'll take this again, which does open. And I'm going to, it's just the very, very tippy top of this locker here, where I got the sort of beigey colored paint a little too far onto it. It was so minuscule, no one would ever see it. This gets to go in the done pile. And then this, there is that thing that's black, needs to be this color instead. Or at least close to this color. It's just not covering very well. Clean this off and see if I can get more pigment and less solvent. And I think part of the problem too is that what might be under there is felt tip pen, and it's just sort of dissolving through. It's changing color. It's changing color enough that I don't need to mess with it anymore. But I will anyway. This is I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do it? Just one more thing. It was okay the way it was. Be able to do between now and next Submarine Wednesday is try to get that green paint open. I think when this dries, you'll still be able to see there's still variation in there because it's not dry yet, but you can see the detail of the conduits and all the dials and everything else on here. I'm going to declare that this is done as well and put that here. And I'll also then be able to install it into the hull of the submarine, completing the front of the torpedo. May need to do just a little bit of touch up on the other side with dark gray. I'm not going to do that today because it's on the back, right? So, yeah, I mean, other than the dark green mess disaster, I painted the detail on this, and this looks pretty good. Okay, that came out okay. And this is green, light blue, and green. So I'll be seeing more green paint come out next time. This side is green, green, dark gray, and dark gray. I'll be painting the whole ladder green as well because I want to get between the rungs, and then be using the fine-tipped felt. Don't need these on to be doing this chatting. Oh, the lights are almost burned out. Excuse me. But I'll be doing the ladder with the fine felt-tip pen, which I've used on other ladders with some success. So this will go. This goes in this is going to be a real challenge of fabrication issue there. This goes here, and it will wait until next week. This is almost done. I just need to paint these, whatever they are, control surfaces on the control panel. Came really close to finishing that today, but it's not quite done. And then this is close. It needs another coat of this kind of orangey, beigey paint. And then the other side needs to be painted light blue because this is a bunk room. That goes on the other side. So yeah, that has to be light blue, as is that. That's light blue as well. So these two sides will be the light blue color that the middle of this will be after these are finished on this side and it dries. So I'll be, I don't know. I might do the light blue, because if I do the light blue, it's just in the middle here, but it will finish these, and I'll be able to add these two to the these are done. Isn't that wonderful pile? And then after that, I will need to see if these all fit again, and then do a whole lot of finishing to try to get these tubes to the right length and to get this floor to fit right. And all of that, as I said, is going to be it's going to be modeling fabrication that I haven't done before. So I'll cover that up so that it doesn't get all filthy or dirty or busted or whatever between now and then. I'm going to be signing off, and I'll see you on Friday. Probably, I don't know what I'm going to be doing Friday. Yeah, maybe the rosin printer might be started up, might be getting that started up. And sorry, I just knocked the lenses off my head magnifier. If that happens, I'll have some minifigs to paint. If not, I might just come back and finish up these submarine parts. So we might have more bulkheads. We might have more bulkhead painting on Friday, or we might have brand new, not yet ever seen minifigs. Dice and Dungeons, thanks all of you who have new followers, especially. Thank you. If you liked what you see, you can become a follower, a subscriber, or it's after 2, so I'll just say patreon.com/diceanddungeons and become a patron. Thank you all, and see you Friday morning, more or less at 10.